Hello everyone and welcome to the 20-second Hammer tutorial in the version 2 series. This tutorial will apply to all Source Engine games. I will be using Counter-Strike Global Offensive to complete this tutorial. In today's tutorial we will be going over a complete implementation and importation of sounds, custom, and stock into your level. We're going to start off by placing Ambient Generics and Soundscapes just to get you rolling. Then we're going to go into importing our own custom sounds and looping a wave file. And then finally we will do the creation of sound scripts and soundscape creation to fully customize your level. So to begin, we're just going to press Shift E to select our entity tool, and we're going to create an ambient generic. This ambient generic can be a positional or global sound in your level. You can use it for music or when a player activates something. We're going to have a sound play when we enter this room. Placing our object in the room, pressing Alt-Enter, to bring up its object properties, we're going to change its class type to an ambient generic. Right off the bat, we see we have this radial sphere, which represents where the sound will be heard, assuming you're standing in this sphere. If we go over to flags, there's 3 flags that we will use quite a bit. Play Everywhere will change the sound from positional to global. This will be used for music or other things like that. Start Silent means that the sound will not start playing as soon as the level is loaded, and is not looped tells the game to not loop the sound. If you uncheck this, that does not mean that you'll get a looped sound. For a sound to be properly looped, it needs to have flags inside of the wave file to tell it where it can loop. So for now, we're just going to leave these all default. Go back to the Class Info tab, and under Name, we need to name it something so it can be triggered. I'm just going to call this Room. The next thing we want to look at is the sound name. When you select that, you'll get the Browse option. Click Browse, and we're presented with the sound browser. The sound browser is pretty straightforward. We have our list of sounds here that are seen, a filter, and the sound name. There are a few ways to browse for sounds. You can choose this by sound type. Our options are game sounds, raw, and scenes. Game sounds are pulled from the sound scripts. Raws are just direct file paths to the raw file, such as ambient animal bird17.wave. We're going to stick to game sounds for now, and then in the filter I'm going to put start. I'm going to scroll down to the sound that I want to play as soon as we enter this room, and if autoplay is checked, I can click on it and it'll play the sound for me in a preview. If I want to hear that sound again, I can hit preview, and I can stop it if I want to. I'm going to hit OK, and that will add the sound to my sound name. We can also invoke the sound to be played from right here as well. A few other options that you might want to change are volume. If the sound is too loud or too quiet, you can change this. Do know that 10 is the maximum volume. We have a fade in and fade out time, but if we just want this sound to play as soon as we enter the room, this is how we're going to leave it. I'm going to place this to be underneath the light, so it's coming from the center of the room, and then I'm going to create a trigger. And with my trigger multiple, I'm going to add on start touch, select my ambient generic, and then choose play sound. Hit apply, and then I can close out of that. That is a quick and easy way to add sounds to your level. Let's check out what it looks like in game. Here we are in game. We're just going to walk over here, and as soon as I enter this room, the sound will play. And the sound is positional. If you'd like to visualize the sounds that are being played in your level, you can do so by opening the console and typing SND show 1. After SV Cheats is on, of course. We can see that in the top right, it's now telling us what sounds are being played on what channels. If we exit the room and enter again, it will also go ahead and play the sound again. You can find other sound-related console commands by typing find SND into your console. This will print out all of the sound-related commands that you might want to play with. SND Visualize is also a good one that you'll want to play with. This will allow you to visualize where sounds are actually being played from in the world. You can see it's leaving a little mark underneath where my footsteps are coming from. If I exit the room and re-enter it, it will show us that that sound is coming from an ambient generic right underneath the light. Now we'll want to add soundscapes to our level. A soundscape is a set of ambient sounds that will constantly play as soon as you've activated them. You don't have to remain in the activation field for the soundscape to continue playing. They'll play until you tell it to activate another soundscape or you disconnect from the server. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to use the built-in soundscapes at this point in time. Later we'll create our own soundscape and we'll go into more detail then. The first thing we need to know is what soundscapes are available to us and how do we listen to them. Start out by loading up a game, and then in your console type clear, followed by CL soundscape print debug info. This will go ahead and give us a list of soundscapes available to us and the soundscape that's currently playing. I like to select the entire list of soundscapes and then copy them to a text file for me to later reference. For this tutorial, we're going to use the Dust2 indoors and outdoors, since we have an indoor and outdoor area in our map. If we'd like to preview a soundscape, just select it, go to your console, type play soundscape, and paste it in. We can now hear that we're using the indoor soundscape from Dust2. This is the soundscape that's played when you're in a tunnel. If you'd like to confirm what soundscape you're playing, enter that debug command again, and it will tell us the current soundscape. This is the debug soundscape that's playing. This is a soundscape that was invoked by using the play soundscape command. The current soundscape is the soundscape that was activated by the map. As you can tell, by using the debug commands, we're able to override the current playing soundscape. If I wanted to start playing this overpass soundscape, I just enter that command and hit enter, and we now hear trees from the park. If I enter the debug command again, it'll tell us that the current soundscape that we're playing is Overpass Park. So now let's go ahead and add these soundscapes to our level. Adding soundscapes is really easy. Start by pressing Shift-E to select a new entity, and change it to an NV soundscape. You'll see we have 3 soundscape entities here: a normal NV soundscape, a proxy, and a triggerable. Select NV soundscape and click Apply. We have this radius circle now. What this means is that this is the radius that the player has to be in for the soundscape to begin playing. The player also must be able to see the soundscape. This means that if you have a leak in your level, soundscapes may encounter issues or not function at all. Press Alt-Enter to open this object properties, and we see that the radius is set to 128. If we change this value to -1, this soundscape will start playing as soon as the player can see it. This can be used if you only want one soundscape in your level, if it's a battle arena or some other thing. Most of the time, we do use the radius feature. We see that soundscape is set to nothing. If we want a soundscape to play, we need to put it here. So I'm going to select Dust2.Outdoors and paste it in here. We see there are soundscape positions 0 through 7 for a total of 8 positions. I'll go into this in more detail later when we create our own soundscape. We also now need to name this soundscape. I'm going to name it SS Outside. I like to prefix all of my soundscape names with SS for easy searching and editing later. Click Apply and then Close. But we have all these windows that the player can get out from and a second entryway. If this soundscape had position sounds in it, we wouldn't want to create a bunch of master soundscapes, if you will. We want to use proxies. I'm just going to shift drag this entity and then press Alt-Enter, and we're going to change it to an NV Soundscape proxy. Once we've created the proxy, we're going to clear out the name and make it reference under Soundscape entity our master soundscape. That now means that when we enter this soundscape proxy, it's going to grab all of its settings from the master soundscape. I'm now just going to place a few of these to make sure that if the player were to enter or exit through any of these windows, that they hit one of these and begin playing the sounds. Now, as long as they touch, even just barely, this sphere, they will begin playing the sound. Now, it may seem a little messy to have all these spheres just to start a soundscape. So what if we want our soundscape to trigger in a box instead? While the spheres will work, and this isn't technically an incorrect way, we can still do it a bit cleaner. We're going to use a soundscape triggerable now to trigger our indoor soundscape, since this is basically a perfect square. I'm going to start by creating a trigger volume inside that the player will have to touch when they enter the inside area. I'm going to do this by copying the trigger multiple that I created earlier. I'm going to go and remove its output. I'm going to change it to be a trigger soundscape, and now I need to create the soundscape triggerable inside of it. So creating a new entity and making it a NV Soundscape triggerable, I'm going to click Apply, and I'm going to name it. Now, for an NV Soundscape triggerable, it does function like a normal soundscape, meaning that when you enter its radius, it will still begin playing the soundscape. It will also begin to play the soundscape when we enter this trigger volume. We only want it to trigger when we enter the trigger volume, so set its radius to 0. Do not set its radius to -1, because if you do that, as soon as we enter our level and can see it, it will begin playing it. We'd much rather have its radius set to 0, because we want to use the trigger volume to begin the soundscape. Now, make sure to put in the soundscape that you want it to play. Click Apply, select your trigger soundscape. Now click the eyedropper and select our soundscape triggerable of SS Indoor. Click Apply, and then that's it. Let's go ahead and compile, and we can see what this looks like or sounds like in-game. Here we are in-game, and we'll notice that there are no current soundscapes playing. If we enter the command soundscape debug 1, we can see what soundscapes are currently being played and by what entity. As I walk forward, we see that the soundscape is now begun to play. And we can see that by the green line, this is the active soundscape, and also which one it's referencing. If I walk inside, we see that the indoor soundscape has begun playing. If I climb through one of these windows, we've now switched the soundscape to be outside. We can also re-verify this by entering that print debug info and seeing that our active soundscape is dust2 outdoors. If I go inside again, we see that that soundscape has now changed to dust2 indoors. So that is a quick, easy way of getting soundscapes into your level without having to dig too much into scripts to customize the soundscapes. Now, what if we want to add our own custom sound to our level? This could be a song or just a sound effect. So I have a song that I've downloaded off of YouTube, and I'm just going to open it up in Audacity so I can convert it to a wave and the proper settings for Counter-Strike. If you don't have Audacity, you can download it from ninite.com, or just Google Audacity and you'll find its SourceForge page. I'm going to drag and drop the MP3 onto Audacity, and it'll quickly open it. I'm going to edit out a little bit of the song. And this is the song that I want to use. I'm just going to go to File and Export, and then choose Wave Microsoft Signed 6-bit PCM. Using the default settings of Audacity, the sound will work in-game without an issue. Go ahead and click Save. Audacity will ask us if we want to put any meta info in it. Just click OK. You don't have to do that. It'll export it, and we'll end up with the WAV file wherever we saved it. Now we need to just drag and drop it into our game files. So, going to your Steam apps, Common, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, or whatever game you're working on, go to the Games folder, and then Sound. Never put a sound file into the root of sound. Always create a subfolder such as Custom or My Sounds, and place your sounds in here. I now have song.wave, and I'm just going to move it into here. And now we can go ahead and choose our sound from a Ambient Generic. Click Browse, change your game type to RAW, and then search for it. If it doesn't show up, you can refresh the sounds, and it should instantly show up.
In the marmalade forest.
Counter-Strike and other games can use MP3s, but they won't preview in the sound previewer. It's best practice to always use waves, as those are the best for the game. Unfortunately, their file size is a little bit larger than MP3s, but you can use MP3s nonetheless. I don't know the settings off the top of my head to make MP3s work, so that's why I just use waves as well. Click Apply, and then close out, and recompile. Here we are in game. We're going to now go invoke our sound to be played. But the sound hasn't played. If we open up our console, we'll now see SND start sound failed to load. The song is missing from the Discord repository. Depending on the game that you're working on, you may have a sound cache, and you need to update the cache before the sounds will work. To do this, just type SND update audio cache. It should say updated one of a number of cached files. This should now mean that your sound is in the game cache and can be read next time it's called. If you're working on a mod, you can also invoke the SND rebuild audio cache. This takes a bit longer as it scraps the cache that's loaded and rebuilds it. This can also be helpful if you have some corruption in your sound cache.
In the marmalade forest.
Now, when I enter this volume, the sound is playing, and we can see that it's playing My Sounds sound.wave. There may be times when you want to loop a wave file. Looping wave files are used for ambient sounds and soundscapes such as wind, so that the sound keeps looping and never ends. To do this, we need to add markers inside the wave file. Unfortunately, Audacity is unable to do this, but there's another free piece of software called Waveosaur that can. The first thing we're going to do is download and open Waveosaur. You can find Waveosaur using a link in the description below or by Googling Waveosaur. When you open it up, you'll be greeted with this program. Go ahead and drag the file in that you would like to have loop and find the part that you want to loop. I want this part up in the front here. So I'm just going to start by quickly deleting all of the parts that I don't want, leaving me with just the sound.
LB.
I only want this tone at the end to loop. So the sound is going to play this beginning that says Albi, followed by the tones, forever looping. To create the loop points, just highlight the area that you want to loop and press L on your keyboard. You'll see loop start and loop end. If you right click on these and go to properties, you'll be able to fine tune the samples of start and end and the total range. Click OK. And now just click the floppy to save your file. I'm going to call it loop.wave. Now that we have our loop, we can just drag it into our sounds folder and then add it to our ambient generic. Select the sound, we can preview it.
LB.
And under flags, uncheck is not looped. This will make the sound be looped in game. Click apply, close out. Let's compile and hear what it sounds like in game. Alright, here we are in game. I've already updated my audio cache, so I'm going to go invoke that sound to play.
LB.
So as we can tell, the sound loops fine. And if you're an actual audio guy, you can probably make the loop sound a lot better than I can. But that was just a quick and rough cut. Now let's create a basic sound script. A sound script is a script that calls sounds but can put modifiers on them, such as the channel that the sound should be played in, a volume modulation, pitch modulation, sound levels, and so forth. You can also have a sound script call an array of sounds as well, so you can have multiple bird chirps called from the same sound. To begin, open up your games folders, go to Steam Apps, Common, or wherever your game is located, go to the game folder, and then Scripts. We need to add the sound to the manifest to be called. We're going to open up our game sounds manifest. At the bottom, we're going to put preload file on a new line, tab over and put scripts/game_sounds tutorial.txt. And now we just need to create a new text file inside of scripts with this name. Now, inside of this, we can begin creating our sound scripts. We're going to start by just doing a basic pitch change. So we're going to open up with a quote, pitch.change_tut. That's going to be the name that's going to be called when we choose to use this sound. And we need to put everything inside of curly brackets. The first thing that we're going to do is choose the volume. So volume is going to be 1 every time this sound is played. Do pitch, tab over, and we're going to do 10, 250. The comma means to choose a value in between those two randomly every time the sound is called. The pitch can be 0 through 255. A lot of these things you can read up on the VDC on Soundscripts. I'm not going to cover everything, just some basics to get you guys started. Now we need to call the sound. So wave, and then I already have the sound that I want to call right here, which is a voice command that's used in Counter-Strike. And that's the first sound that we've created using pitch.change_tut. Now let's have a random array to choose the I'm on my way sayings every time we press the button. There's 3 different ones for the lead. Let's just go ahead and copy all of this, remove pitch to let it be default, and we're just going to make it be array change.tut. Instead of wave, we're going to use RND wave. Drop that down, add another curly bracket set, and then inside here we can put an array of sounds. So we're going to have sounds 1, 2, and 3, and these will be called randomly every time we call the array change_tut. So we're going to save that. This is just a quick few things to get you started with sound scripts. Honestly, the best way to learn about sound scripts is to go through the VDC article and create your own. I also have a written guide on how to make sound scripts that I'll link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and see what these look like in Hammer. We're going to start by creating a new ambient generic that's going to be called when we press a button. I'm just going to give it a name, click Browse, change my sound type to Game Sounds, refresh them, search for my script name. And we'll apply that there. I'm going to check the is not looped and apply. I'm going to copy this and paste special over to another side, and we're going to make it be the random or array.
I am on my way. I am on my way. I am on my way.
We see that when we preview it,
on my way.
It's not random in Hammer, but in game it will be. I'm now going to create 2 buttons to allow me to trigger these sounds. We're now going to compile and see how these work in game. It should be noted that you may have to restart your game to get the sound scripts to load up. Now when we push this button, we get a hilarious pitch randomly every time we call it. And when we use this button, we should get a different sound every time we press it.
I am on my way. On my way. On my way. I am on my way. I am on my way. On my way. On my way. On my way. I am on my way. On my way. On my way. I am on my way.
So there is a quick, brief introduction on how to use soundscapes. Do note that I would love to go into more detail on this, but sounds are very specific to your level. The best way to learn these is to read through the VDC article and then go from there. But this should be more than enough information to get you guys started. I figured that pitch changes and randomness and an array are the best ways to get you started. Now let's look at creating our own custom soundscapes for our level. The first thing that we need to do is once again browse to our game directory. So common, Counter-Strike Go, CSGO, scripts, and then open soundscapesmanifest.txt. At the bottom, we want to add a new text file. So open quotes, file, tab over, scripts/soundscapes _ your map name. And now we just want to create a file with this exact same name in the scripts folder. We now want to open up that file, and now we can create our own custom soundscape. There's a few things that you'll want to note first. At the beginning of our Soundscapes manifest, there's a list of DSP effects. These DSP effects change how sounds are played, from how a bullet shot will echo, or if it'll sound muffled like you're underwater. Play around with these sounds, but mostly you're just going to use one for generic. We're going to create one soundscape in our level for outside. It's going to have some planes flying around outside, random car sirens, and of course, an AC unit positional sound, and some flies by a garbage can. Let's create our base soundscape. We're going to call this tutorial.outside. Create a set of curly brackets, because everything goes in curly brackets. The first thing that we want to add is just some wind that's outside. This wind is going to be looping constantly, so the first thing we need to do is find the wave that we want to play. A soundscape will always reference the wave file directly. Press Ctrl-Shift-S to open the sound browser, and then change your sound type to raw. In the filter, I'm going to type in wind. This will give me a list of most of the wind sounds. You'll see they're mostly in ambient. This is where most of the soundscape sounds will be. When you click on one, you just kind of get this sound. It's just wind. I'm just going to look for one that I like, dry air short, and I'm going to copy the wave path. Click copy, and then you can click stop there. Back to our soundscape, we're going to create a new line and tab over. We're going to start with DSP, tab over again, and then do 1. This defines the DSP effect for the soundscape. We're going to start by creating our looping wave for our dry wind. We're going to open quote and do play looping, and then another set of curly brackets. Tab over once again within these curly brackets, and then choose volume. Tab over, and we're going to do 0.6. Most of these values you will end up changing after you playtest them, and you find out that they're not quite right. so don't feel bad if you have to keep going back and changing things. Drop down on a new line and select pitch. Going to do 100, and now we're going to choose the wave file. Now we're going to add one more looping wave to our soundscape to make it just right. So I'm just going to copy all this and change it down and look for another wind. I'd like 2 winds to be played so it just gives us more variety. I found the second wind that I want to play, and I'm just going to add it to that wave. I'm also going to lower the volume down a little bit. Now I'd like some random wind gusts to happen in our level. So we see that we have a ton of different wind gust sounds that we can add to an array. This is perfect for our soundscape. We're going to drop down onto another new line, and we're going to do an open quote, play random. This will allow us to play random sounds from an array. Now, since we're doing play random, we need to specify a time for the sound to be played. So choose time, and then tab over. Since this is a tutorial, I'm going to have the sounds play a lot faster than you normally would. So I'm going to choose 5, 15. We're going to drop down and we're going to choose volume. And again, I'm going to use the commas to randomly assign these volumes. So I'm going to do 0.2, 0.4. And then pitch. Once again, the commas are going to be used to help me add some more modulation to my soundscape. Now I need to choose R&D wave and drop down into another set of curly brackets. This is where I can build my array. I'm going to use wind gust 1. And then I'm just going to choose a few other ones randomly from here. So let's do 3, 4, and 6. So now every 5 to 15 seconds, it's going to randomly pick a volume between 0.2 and 0.4, a pitch between 90 and 110, and randomly one of these waves, and they'll play. Now how about we add some planes that are flying overhead? So let's just do a search for plane. And these sound like 4 good sounds that we can use for our airplanes. We're going to go back into our soundscape, and we're going to do another play random. Once again, another set of curly brackets, and the time, we're going to do 10 and 20. The volume is going to be 0.3, 0.6, pitch 80, 100, and then position random. The position random will automatically have a sound play randomly around the player. So this sound could be above, below, left, right. It's a wonderful thing to do if you want metal clanking or just, a random gust of wind to play. We're going to drop down into a random wave array, another set of curly brackets, and then we can choose our waves of our airplanes. So that is airplane 1 and 2. There was one more here. And now we want to add an AC unit hum. So I'm going to search for AC in my filter, and we have this AMB bank air conditioner. This is the wave that we're going to use for this, and we're going to apply a position of 0 to it. So back to our soundscape, we're going to drop down to a new line and do play looping. Drop down, once again the curly brackets, and we don't need to specify a time, but we do want a volume, and the volume is just going to be 0.9. The pitch is going to be 160. It's going to be a whiny air conditioner, and its position is going to be 0. The wave that we're going to play is that. Now let's go specify the position in Hammer right now, since it's fresh in our mind. So create a new entity, and then choose an info target. We just need to name it something, so I'm going to call it AC. We just go ahead and drop it near the AC unit, and this is where the sound's going to emit from. So I'm just going to put it on top of the AC unit. Now selecting our master soundscape, under position 1, we're going to choose our info target, and click apply. That will then draw a line to it, signifying that there's a sound tied to it. And we can also apply our tutorial outside soundscape to this master. Now let's add some flies to our level. We're going to do this by calling another soundscape in our soundscape that's currently active and forcing a position override on it. This will allow us to create a fly soundscape and then reference it in other soundscapes, so that way we don't have to keep recreating it. To do this, we're just going to drop down and create a new one, tutorial.flies, 2 curly brackets, and create the soundscape like normal. So DSP 1 play random, drop down, 2 more curly brackets. We're going to do time 1, 4, volume 0.4, 0.7, pitch 90, 110, and RND wave, and drop down into another array. I already have the sounds that I want to use, and they are these flies here. Now, going back up into our tutorial outside soundscape, we're going to create a new line, open quotes, play soundscape, its name, which is tutorial.flies, and position override of 1. Make sure you always add your curly brackets, and now we just need to add our info target to our garbage can. So we're going to copy and paste that, call it flies, and then specify it in our positions. Click apply, and then let's compile and see how it works in game. Here we are in game. We can go forward and invoke our soundscape. We see we have our flies being played over there, as well as an airplane being randomly played here, our air conditioning sound played right here, as well as just some random wind sounds. So I hope this tutorial helped you implement sound in every way that you would want in your level. Please refer to the VDC articles on sound scripts and soundscapes for more information. There's a lot to take in, and since sound is such a specific thing to your level, it's difficult to cover it all in tutorials. So I hope this gives you a basis on what you need to get started. I went over a few basic things. Feel free to write me an email if you have any questions on soundscapes or sound scripts, and I'll do my best to help you. Please also remember to pack your scripts into your level, so that way people who download your BSP can hear all of the amazing work that you've done to make your sounds as perfect as they can be. Once again, thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and happy mapping.